All right, everybody, so welcome back. So the Global Digital Compact was recently adopted by UN member states during the landmark Summit of the Future at the UN General Assembly in September 2024. Now it aims to create an open, free and secure digital future for all that upholds human rights, overcomes digital divides and reaffirms multi-stakeholder governance of the internet. So we do have in studio with us this morning Ms. Joanna Kazana, UN Resident Coordinator. We also have Mr. Blanco, United Nations Development Program Resident Representative, and we also have online Cleveland Thomas, International Telecommunication Union Area Representative. Good morning to all. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. Well, Ms. Kazana, let's begin this way. When we speak about the Global Digital Compact, what are we speaking about?
So we are speaking about the first in the history of the global cooperation agreement of the United Nations member states to cooperate on creating a secure, open, and free digital space for all people, for all member states, and for the private persons in the first place. The compact is supported globally by all of the United Nations member states as countries which are really trying very hard now already to invest in digitalization, to modernize the infrastructure that's available to the citizens, but which are also facing pressure from the technology giants, which are defining the way that the digitalization happens. Introduction of artificial intelligence has prompted more international cooperation because AI needs to be governed, it needs to be controlled, it needs to be regulated just as much as any other development or industry are regulated to make sure that people are protected from the consequences of artificial intelligence, from the new technologies. But the compact also and fundamentally tries to make sure that no one is left behind. And this is why the United Nations is so much behind it. And we are really delighted and proud that the UN was able to be ahead of the international movement. And we are going to be also leading the definition of how AI and how digital space is going to be governed in the future.
Yeah. But you made a point there that I just have an aside question on it, because how is this going to work when you have big countries, small countries, you have inequalities of wealth, you do have these big companies with so much resources, and then you have these smaller countries that in some cases are struggling. So how is that going to work?
So it always has to work in a consensual process where the member states are coming together to agree on certain things that need to define the minimum standards of governance of technologies, of also access to internet and access to information and information technologies. What is really important here is that the technological giants are asking for regulation. They know that without regulation, they cannot cooperate. They will not be compatible in between the solutions that they themselves are putting forward on the market. And if you look at what is happening in the European space, if you look at what is happening now in the state of California, where most of the technological giants are based, regulation is starting to take shape already. Now the challenge is to bring it to the global level, to make sure that we have the common framework that regulates digitalization, that regulates AI. And this is where the Global Digital Compact is going to help to ensure that there is the common approach to accessibility of the information and communication technologies, to the open source technologies, which should be treated also as part of the global public goods. There is also a common approach and common priority attached to education on the new technologies and skills. And here, all of the member states are asked to develop their own strategies, national strategies, to increase digital literacy, especially through the education sector. It also requires cooperation on not only e-governance and creating solutions for the people that the government can provide, but also expanding SMEs and entrepreneurship online, and also accessibility of e-commerce through internet-based solutions. There also is a need to create safeguards and protection of privacy online, of data that we are sharing and data we are providing as individuals, and also safeguard the children. So all of these issues are really very much an agenda of the global cooperation, thus also United Nations here in Trinidad and Tobago.
Mr. Blanco, your perspective?
Yeah, digital transformation is happening everywhere, in every ministry, in every country, in every household. That's happening. The question is at what speed and what costs, right? And the UN is precisely a good partner to work with governments on bringing in experts from other countries, experts that are working on similar issues in different parts of the world, experts that have been supporting countries on cybersecurity, on EIDs, on data centers. And that's perhaps the added value of the UN family, bringing those experts, but also making sure they work on the right things, looking at regulatory frameworks. What are the lessons learned from other similar experiences in different countries? The do's and don'ts, so we don't have to reinvent the wheel. Some countries like Trinidad and Tobago with so much expertise and capacity can leapfrog, can quickly adapt, right? Because in this transition, countries can decide to be at the forefront, at the middle of the train, or at the last wagon. Where does this country want to be? And depending on those sort of decisions, the UN can bring the expertise and the knowledge and the connectivity. How can we, because this, as the regional coordinator said, this is about connecting, working together, and that's part of the work of the UN.
Yeah. Mr. Thomas, what's your message here this morning, sir?
Good morning to you, and again, thank you so much for the opportunity to be part of this conversation, and apologies for not being there, I'm abroad. So I join with my colleagues on the importance of having ICT and connectivity and standardization. In the case of the International Telecommunications Union, one of the sectors we have is the ICT Standardization Bureau. And we have world meeting and conversation about standardization relating specific to your question.
Yes.
So the fact that we are able to share and utilize different operators' technology, the likes of probably Apple or any other phone that one may have, it's because of standardization that there is no need to simply have only Apple products. You can share it across different platforms. So international cooperation, it's one of the things that is important. And again, through some of what you heard and our world events, like standardization event, we are able to share and ensure that kind of efficiency among operators and countries throughout the world.
Yeah. But are they bigger companies that are involved in this process? Have they embraced your concept?
I believe so. I think that the leading international giants are indeed interested to engage globally. And I think that they're also eager to present their best practices in how to make sure that, for instance, artificial intelligence is controlled, that you can provide the source data based on which algorithms work, how to introduce more transparency into the international information and communication technologies. I think that this whole digital economy represents such a huge potential, not only for the tech giants, but also other industries, that the private sector is eager to collaborate and is eager to create the standards, as Cleveland has, Mr. Thomas has mentioned, but also to create space for more business for themselves. So by collaborating, you are not competing, you are creating new opportunities for launching of new products in the IT sphere.
But I suspect all of this that we're speaking about here this morning, it's going to take some time to roll out before we see the true benefits of it. Is there a time frame where you would like to see everything come to fruition?
I think that one of the first very specific and measurable targets is to ensure universal connectivity for the people by 2030. So this is the very concrete and very measurable goal for everyone around the world to be connected to the internet and to have accessible internet, not only in terms of potentially accessible infrastructure, but also affordable infrastructure. The price of being online is different in different countries. We know here in Trinidad and Tobago that you can compare the price of individual connectivity here and in other countries. And I think that this is the area of competition where countries can do also a lot to lower the price. For instance, roaming charges. They don't need to be so high, and data roaming in particular. So connectivity of individuals and making sure that all of the global population, as opposed to now only 2/3 of the global population, are online. And then we can talk about introducing some timeline for creating global public goods, like this global infrastructure that should be free and open and accessible. So for the time being, we are still working with the Agenda 2030 Sustainable Development Goals, and the goal is that by 2030, connectivity should be tackled. And then regulations, and in different spheres, the regulations are going to follow a different timeline. I think definition of the guardrails for the development of the artificial intelligence is going to have different timelines for different aspects of this kind of development. And I think that we should just leave it to the experts, to the technology, to the working groups, making sure also that this is a very inclusive process. It has to be inclusive of the governments. It has to be also inclusive of the human rights activists who are going to raise concerns over how far AI can go into private space, or how far governments can go into using AI for the purposes of what the government needs to ensure. So human rights activists have to be around the table. Of course, the tech experts and tech individuals who are very, very entrepreneurial and very aware also of the risks that the new technologies are bringing have to be around the table. So we don't have a concrete timeline for every aspect of the implementation of this digital compact, but we have a very good commitment and now beginning of certain processes which are already starting to put into place.
Experiences in other countries tell us that digital transformation move at the speed of the trust people have in the system.
Right.
This is not about political will, about investment. This is about how we as citizens feel about this. Because digital transformation is not about technology and hardware. It's about people. And that's one of the main outcomes of some of the conference and discussions we've been having. This has to be a people-centered approach. If I don't trust the system, if I don't trust the cashless transition, if I don't trust how I enter my information in the licensing authority, it's not going to work, no matter if we have the best possible software solution. So in terms of timelines, the processes have to include everybody in. And as the recent coordinator mentioned, inclusivity is very important. The digital divide, how our seniors, for instance, feel about this. I always say my mother doesn't know how to switch off the iPhone. That's a problem. That's a real problem. How are we expecting her or other senior citizens to make money transfers on the phone? So that process of inclusion, participation is critical. So my main message from UNDP, this isn't about technology. This is not about technology only.
Yes.
This has to be about people, human rights. And I think that's very strongly at the center of the government of Trinidad and Tobago, the Ministry of Digital Transformation, where there is a big push to bring this people-centered approach in all the work they are doing.
Yeah, but Mr. Thomas, what, how important, if I can put it that way, is the contribution of small countries such as us in the Caribbean to this thrust and to these suggestions and recommendations that you all are making here this morning?
Well, first and foremost, regardless of size, that is not necessarily as important as ensuring that we have connectivity for every person. And therefore, if you take Montserrat as one of the smallest countries in the Caribbean region with just less than 10,000 people, there's a need still for connectivity of every single person. And that's the agenda. So you find that even in a country as small as that, you still have two operators competing. You understand what I mean? It's still important. And therefore, for small countries, the aspiration of small countries, regardless of size, are no different from larger countries. We are talking about economic growth. We are talking about social cooperation. We are talking about the need for technology for climate change, disaster reduction. We are talking about certain projects. For instance, through the ITU, we have collaborated with the government of Trinidad and Tobago for a project called Smart Seas, dealing with small-scale fishers out there who may go missing. How can the technology keep and identify where they are, keep them connected? That is no different a challenge for other developing countries, as it were. And I should take this time to also recognize, when you ask the question about timelines, each country, in fact, look at having national plans, normally between 4 to 5 years, recognizing that the technology and the pervasiveness of it is so important. So Trinidad and Tobago has a national ICT plan through the Ministry of Digital Transformation. And their plan speaks to things about people-centeredness as much as it speaks to investment, etc. So what we do as the UN agency, working with these governments, is to bring that plan and bring it into fruition. So my colleagues there and others work with each one. How can we use the technology for better healthcare, for transportation? We can use it for agriculture, etc. So that's how we do it, regardless of size. And we do, I think, it's a phenomenal job of the government that we have had there and others in the region cooperating with us to make sure that their aspirations through ICT really are met.
Yeah, so I think it is safe to say that, because he did speak about Trinidad and Tobago, but the other countries in the Caribbean can identify with the message.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Every country globally, in the Caribbean or elsewhere, also the small island developing states in the Pacific, they can identify with the message, and they need to identify really quickly, because connectivity for you is about everything. You know, you need to rely on connectivity not only in terms of digital technologies, but also in terms of trade, in terms of exports and imports, in terms of education opportunities. You depend on the broader region as anybody else depends on, you know, the neighborhoods and global cooperation. So I think that the Caribbean region is a place where we are seeing already a lot of innovations. We are seeing a lot of focus on data. Data is a very, very important element of the new technologies, and especially the solutions that the new technologies are going to provide. Statistical information, access to information from the businesses, creating reliable and complete data sets that can be analyzed for business purposes, but also for public services, is really crucial. And we have excellent cooperation in the many domains where data and statistics is at the center of the cooperation. I want to mention here cooperation with the Ministry of Planning and Development, where we are creating an SDG the repository, SDG data repository, that is going to cover all of the spheres, all of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. We are helping in the Ministry of Education to apply information and communication technologies into the methodology and the skill sets of the educators. This is a collaboration between the many different agencies, and here I want to mention UNDP, but also our international multilateral partners in terms of the banks, international banks,
yes,
which are funding this agenda. We are working with the Ministry of Health, introducing robots in the Ministry of Health facilities, automating some of the basic processes of data collection and interviews that could be demonstrated and then promoted through the education system in the health industry. As Cleveland mentioned, we also are promoting solutions, digital solutions in the food production industry, in agriculture.
Yes.
We are promoting technologies for early warning systems, which are going to measure, for example, the level of water, or alert different systems to react in case of increased surge of electric use, etc. Everything connected to climate also depends on the new technologies. So all of these things are common to the Caribbean islands, Caribbean states. I think that there's a lot of cooperation already happening in all of the development spheres, and digitalization goes like a thread across all of the development priorities. And we always say also from the UN side that if you invest in digitalization, you are going to accelerate development across the board on all of your priorities.
Yeah. I only have a few minutes again, but Mr. Blanco, your final comments?
Just to add perhaps on this component of the Caribbean, the wider Caribbean, some of these challenges go beyond borders, like climate change. Nothing we can do individually as a country. Same, for instance, on cybersecurity or on data centers. These are big endeavors that require countries coming together. And Trinidad and Tobago is very strongly positioned with a very good vision and good positioning. Last May, the government of Trinidad and Tobago, with the support of UNDP, CAF, and Inter-American Development Bank, brought together 20 countries in the Caribbean to talk about the future. What do we want? How do we see our countries in the future in terms of digitalization? We talk about small island digital states. What's the vision and how do we get there? We talk about economy, we talk about governance and cybersecurity, we talk about infrastructure, and we talk about people. So what are the pathways? We call them digital pathways to get there. And this conversation was led or championed by the government of Trinidad and Tobago, which says there is a lot of sharing, a lot of cooperation that is required because some of these challenges need all the Caribbean region to come together. Yes. And I think the expertise, the knowledge, the vision, the capacities in this country position ourselves in that conversation at the top.
Yeah. Mr. Thomas, anything else you'd like to place on the table before you leave us this morning, sir?
Thank you. Just quickly to say that the emphasis is connecting the world and leaving no one behind. And let's not forget the vulnerable that are among us, persons who have challenges, whether in rural communities or elsewhere. And therefore, we will do what we can to ensure that we work with the government and governments in the region and the rest of the world to ensure that all persons are connected to the internet, whether for education or otherwise, particularly the youths, with a focus there. And I close by telling you again that with Trinidad and Tobago, we have seen some good things come out as far as digital transformation is concerned. With the government, I think, receiving our prestigious award recently, the WISIS Award, for one of our major projects in the world. And we commend them for that. And we want to really say that a lot of good work is happening with us through the ITU and looking and continuing to work with the administrations to make sure that everyone is connected, near or far. And let's work together. It's an invitation to work together because it's only through collaboration, regionally, internationally, or otherwise, we will see the fruits and the benefits of the ICT that is intended.
Yeah.
Thank you again.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Kazana?
Well, thank you for having us. I just want to say at the end of our meeting to underline that we are celebrating this week the United Nations Week.
Yes.
Globally, 24th of October is celebrated as the UN Day. We are celebrating in Trinidad and Tobago and the broader Caribbean region. Yeah. Here in Port of Spain, we have 250 people working for the United Nations, and I want to use this opportunity to greet all of my colleagues and salute them, but also use this opportunity as a great big thank you message for the excellent cooperation with our national partners, government, civil society, private sector as well, yes, especially in promoting new technologies and the new solutions for the development of the future.
Yes, and thank you very much for coming this morning. We do appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Bye for now. All right, so we are going to have a very quick break, everybody. We're coming back.
No bad vibes, no worries, have no time for stressing. Yeah, and the L is no longer a loss, a L is a lesson. It's a no profit in studying people business, so why you investing? What a next man do it is